Internet Governance briefing session on the major developments during this month of April. We will, as always, have the audience here in Geneva, our colleagues, and the online audience. Hello, good morning or good evening, wherever you are located. And we will basically summarize what we do for every digital briefing, summarize the main developments, and give you the broader view of what's going on in global and regional digital politics. You received, and it's displayed on the screen, IG Barometer, which shows what are the issues in the focus, and you can see the sort of higher pressure and the lower pressure comparing to the previous months. And we will use mainly IG Barometer as the basis for discussion. As you know, the main purpose of IG briefing is to provide you with zoom-out view, because I'm sure that you are bombarded with the information on different digital developments, and sometimes it is difficult to have the broader picture, what's going on in different fields, and interplay and interconnections among different policy fields. So this is the main purpose of the briefing, to provide you with general view, and whenever it is possible to focus deeply on specific issues. And we have here with us, Vlada is in Belgrade, and we have usually somebody, Nigel from ICANN, who can give us update on developments on in the ICANN field. Now, you have the IG Barometer, and now we will go step by step through the major developments in each of these issues: cybersecurity, global IG architecture, and so on, so on. Now, I need here it is. Okay. As you know, April was very busy. The spring, generally speaking, is going to be extremely busy in the digital politics. Now, we had between 12th and 19th, there was the major UN Congress on crime prevention and criminal justice. It is held every 4 years. The previous one was held in Brazil, the last one in April in Doha. And one of the important issues was the cybercrime during this conference, and we'll reflect on it. On 16th and 17th, there was a global conference on cyberspace in the Netherlands, in The Hague, another important event. And on 20th of April, on the IANA track, IANA Transition Naming Community expected to publish second draft proposal, and they published. Then you have a Riga summit at the end of the month, 27, 29 of April, happening now on multilingual digital single market. We will have tomorrow and day after tomorrow, 29th and 30th, we didn't add it, the conference on Internet as a global public resource in Malta. I'm flying after the briefing to Malta, and we'll have for 2 days discussion with specialists from climate change, environmental, and other communities to see what are the concepts related to global public good that could be applied to the Internet. This is more or less the general framework. The first issue in our barometer, as you can see, is the cybersecurity. Cybersecurity featured highly prominently during the global conference on cyberspace in The Hague, and it was underlying tone. Even if for those of you who attended the conference in The Hague, you can see also with the dressing code there were quite a few officers. The organization was really precise, and there was element of feeling atmosphere of security, unlike some other meetings in IG sphere, which I would say more relaxed in the name of protocol and those elements. Cybersecurity featured very highly on the agenda of the Hague conference. And it's very likely that process, initiated by London conference, there was in Budapest, Seoul, and the Hague, will have a strong focus on cybersecurity. United States introduced the new U.S. executive order on the 1st of April, quite an interesting from the international point of view, introducing enabling sanctions against persons and entities abroad engaged in significant malicious cyber-enabled activities. And what is interesting in the wording of this executive order is that it enables sanctions for persons and entities. And there is now discussion in the community, what does it mean entities? Does it mean states or companies, or how to interpret that element? But this is interesting that after the Sony case at the beginning of the year, when there were sanctions against North Korea, this is now in a way codification of this element of sanctions into the policy framework, U.S. policy framework. Therefore, there is now basis to impose, according to this executive order, sanctions against individuals and entities if they're involved in significant malicious cyber-enabled activities. There is already discussion on interpretation of that. What is significant? Malicious is clear. This, I would say, is important, quite important development. Then Google, there was Google dropping Chinese root certificate authority following trust breach. There was this rather technical development. Vlada may reflect on that later on. There were two other developments which are important. We haven't listed it in it. One was the Doha conference, which, as you know, was discussing the ways how to fight cybercrime. And there is basically, like in any policy discussions, there are few positions. One position is that other countries should accept de facto customary law in the field of cybercrime fight, which is the Budapest Convention of the Council of Europe. And many rules and sort of concepts in cybercrime accepted worldwide are basically based on the Budapest Convention. Some countries, for the formal or protocol reasons, are refusing to sign and to adhere to Budapest Convention because it is a regional convention. It is a regional convention which is open for signatures and accession later on to all countries. And you have countries outside Europe, quite a few countries, which acceded to the Budapest Convention. Now, this was one view. Let us use the Budapest Convention. It's there. There is a lot of practice. Let's develop a global regime around the Budapest Convention. And the other view is let us draft the new global cybercrime convention. That was the major discussion which was 4 years ago in San Salvador at the previous crime summit, and it was the issue here. And I would say the compromise was found that basically the cybercrime community will continue capacity building, and there will be open-ended group which will continue its work, very useful work, which started in San Salvador. Therefore, this is a more or less compromise. Therefore, that issue, whether it should be Budapest Convention or new convention, remains open. With de facto, most solutions from Budapest Convention are integrated into national and regional rulings. Another important development which should be kept in mind is that if you can recall our briefing for February, President Obama went to Silicon Valley asking internet companies to cooperate more on the fight against terrorism in exchange of information. And that push for the more exchange of information is generally the process that we are seeing worldwide. Therefore, there is a request for the companies, internet companies, to basically exchange information with the government authorities. There is this request from the French authorities, and the new French surveillance law will be pushing, requesting more cooperation by private companies. There was executive order by President Obama from February. Well, this is an interesting development. More and more pressure on the private companies, internet companies, to cooperate in the especially anti-terrorist activities. And obviously, resistance from the internet companies, especially when it comes to the question of trust of users. That will be probably one of the major dynamics in the global digital politics. And it was underlying theme also in The Hague in discussions, how to make, do we have zero-sum game here, more security, less privacy, or is there a possibility to have a win-win solution? And this is basically one of the key formulas of digital politics that we'll be discussing. This is about cybersecurity, therefore, increasing in relevance, conference in The Hague, new U.S. executive order with possibility of imposing sanctions beyond the United States on entities and individuals for cyber attacks, Google dropping China root certification following the trust breach, Doha meeting on cybercrime, and more requests for sharing information by private companies in the anti-terrorist fight. Now, the second point where we indicated that there was increasing sort of dynamism was the way how to create this global IG architecture, digital politics architecture. And there were two major developments. One was establishment of Global Forum on Cyber Expertise. It was established during the Cyberspace Conference in The Hague. It has some sort of terms of reference, but it is not completely clear what space it will cover. Should it focus only on cybersecurity, which is one of the possibilities, or should it cover the issues beyond cybersecurity, broader internet governance, including human rights, e-commerce, and other issues? And I think that will create some sort of discussions with the wider community. What is the relation with Net Mundial initiative? What is the relation with Internet Governance Forum? That will be this really open issue, which in my view wasn't solved in The Hague. It was just launched. Net Mundial initiative, after a rather bumpy start last year, is now stabilizing and engaging community on discussion on terms of reference, what it should do. They had a meeting at the Stanford University, and they now launched the draft terms of reference, and they asked community to comment. Now, an interesting development, although the Net Mundial initiative was criticized in initial phase for a top-down approach, I think this has been increasingly corrected by engaging the broader community. But in the same time, Global Forum on Cyber Expertise, which is another more or less competing initiative. Basically, most of these initiatives are trying to connect needs with supply, needs for cyber solution with cyber expertise. Was more a sort of a top-down approach by governments, and technical community and civil society are complaining that they haven't had enough say into this field. One has to be correct that the organizer of Cyber Space Conference never claimed that it should be multi-stakeholder initiative. They support multi-stakeholder principle, but they have never claimed. Therefore, some communities are complaining that they are out of the forum discussion. Therefore, that will be an interesting dynamic. Next issue, which is on our barometer list, is IANA transition. For those of you who are new in the process, this is the IANA process started on the 14th of March 2014, when the U.S. government, Department of Commerce, expressed their interest to make their function, previously performed the supervisory function of the ICANN and the IANA function, to make it global. They want to pass that supervisory role to some global entity. And they ask international community, global community, to come with the proposals. Since then, community, ICANN, IANA, international organizations have been discussing ways and means how to do it, what it should be. Because U.S. The Department of Defense posed some criteria. For example, it should be multi-stakeholder arrangement. It should be controlled by an international organization, national governments. Therefore, that discussion is going on, and I don't know if Nigel is here with us. He may update us with about that. Yeah, Nigel is there. We may ask him to connect later on to with his comments. But the key issue is that naming community. There are few communities. Naming community has been the most touchy with the transition process, and they are now basically they tabled one of their proposals. Naming community is basically companies and entities which are running various dots, .com and the other. This is the major business interest in this transition. There was also indication of United States officials that it is very likely that the process will be prolonged and it won't be completed by 30th of September. Therefore, it is very likely that this transition, which was initiated on 14th of March, won't be completed by 30th September, which is going to create some sort of dynamism in community, because some commentators argue that it is linked to the VERSIS process, also discussion on the VERSIS, where governments are basically trying to see how to manage internet governance globally. Nigel will give us more reflections later on. There was the question of ICANN and new domains. Nothing special. There were the question controversy around the .sax, the registration of this domain name. We'll hear later on from Nigel what was the major controversy. Therefore, relatively quiet month for ICANN. I'm sure that our ICANN friends won't agree because there is a lot of negotiation discussions, but at least from outside, it was a relatively quiet month. On the question of online privacy and data protection, we had few developments. One major development at the end of March, and UN Human Rights Council was adoption of the resolution on the privacy and in digital age, so-called Brazilian-German initiative, which started with a resolution in General Assembly. Therefore, now it is adopted, and it calls for appointment of the special rapporteur to the right of privacy. Therefore, special rapporteur should be appointed, I guess, at the next council meeting, but before the end of the year, who will have a right to see how the privacy rules and rights are sort of applied. The privacy came again into the focus of the Hague Conference, and there is a general, it will be indicated in cybersecurity. As you see, issues are linked. There is a general push and request from governments to have access to data. That push is going mainly towards internet service providers, and we have that tendency all over the world, US, UK, French, also quite a few. Therefore, this is developing countries. This is a general trend. On this point, I will just step back and give you the context, what is the major dilemma of digital politics. It is summarized in this triangle, where you have internet users on the top, when you have internet industry, and you have vendors. Now, in this is the part of the business model. One of the problems for internet industry is that if they share the data with the security community, they will do it without any financial compensation like they are getting from the vendors, and it can endanger the trust of the internet users. Therefore, internet community, Silicon Valley community mainly, is uneasy about these developments. And you can see even in the European Union initiative, which Latvian presidency initiated negotiations of the question of information security, where one of the key requirements will be request to the operators of the internet infrastructure to share the information with the government authorities, is questioned by countries that host the big internet companies, like Ireland, for example, because that would be then pressure on Ireland to deliver. Ireland, as you know, hosts the Facebook and major Silicon Valley companies based in Europe. Therefore, online privacy remains very high on policy agenda. It will stay, and we don't expect it will be definitely one of the key issues around the data protection. On net neutrality, after the Big Bang and decision of the FCC in February to reclassify internet infrastructure as a sort of a common carrier and to change the regulation, now we have the FCC filed the rules with the Federal Registry. Therefore, they're implementing that decision. Once it is implemented administratively, we expect the lawyers to become much richer in the United States. One expects wave of lawsuits against the FCC in the United States. That will probably happen after the summer. That's therefore net neutrality, Big Bang in February, announcement of the FCC, therefore that internet is not anymore information service, it's becoming telecommunication service regulated with the common carrier principles, and it, as you know, triggered a big debate because the consequences will be major in the United States and worldwide. Now we have just implementation and possible another wave, another Big Bang after the summer with the first lawsuits and the developments. Next is e-commerce. And now we can, I'm sure our colleagues online, but us here in Geneva faced the first anti-Uber protest. I don't know if you saw the taxi drivers a few weeks ago having a black flags. And I was curious because I initially thought it looked like ISIS flag, Islamic State flag. But then I read it carefully. It was the protest against Uber. Uber is coming to Geneva and to Europe. And as you know, all over Europe, there are discussions how to regulate Uber. Should they have a free access? Should they have some sort of a special status? In the European Union, there is Google is facing antitrust action for continuation of this anti-monopoly suit when it comes to the Google's position and the dominant position at the European market. Those are issues related to e-commerce. Well, that is more or less all when it comes to the barometer. In sum, cybersecurity remains very high on diplomatic agenda. Global IG architecture, new dynamism with the Hague new forum on cyber expertise. Net Mundial initiative is trying to recalibrate their approach and move it more bottom up. IANA transition and ICANN, more or less quiet month of April, at least publicly speaking. Online privacy and data protection gaining momentum after the UN Human Rights Council decision, and now requests from governments to have access to data in the anti-terrorist activities. Net neutrality, more or less, same dynamism, jurisdiction, nothing particularly relevant, and e-commerce increasing dynamism around the status of Uber, especially in Europe, and Google and the EU. This is more or less zoom out view. Now, I suggest that we check with Vlada and Nigel and other colleagues if they would like to make some comments. Then could we have them on making? Maybe Vlada first, or Nigel, who is ready? Who is ready? Okay.
Hey, Jovan. Okay, Vlada here. Thanks for the good recap. When you were talking about cybersecurity, I couldn't but to remember the importance of digital hygiene, because behind your back there were guys who were actually doing the hygiene of the glasses of the WMO. So that reminds us of how important the hygiene is. But back to the issues on cybersecurity, you touched upon the Doha Declaration. I think an additional short point on that is that within the article, which directly links to cyberspace related to crime, it also relates to the kind of a task to enhance the security of computer networks and protect the integrity of the infrastructure, which means that in a way the concerns of the infrastructure have now also been built in the Doha Declaration related to cybercrime. So now we're having kind of overlapping of discussions on infrastructure protection as well, now from the angle of cybercrime as well, which is quite interesting. And when it comes to the Chinese case of DDoS and the Google and so on, it was basically, not to go too much into details what happened, but basically it was a new case in which a state, in this case China, kind of misused the open or the trust built an internet to run DDoS attacks against political opposition in a way, even beyond the border of the Chinese Great Firewall. So we are seeing more and more states dealing with using cyberspace and the vulnerabilities of the space for their own interest. We have seen it with the other states as well. And we are also seeing in this case Baidu, but in previous cases the US corporate sector, which is in a way now backpedaling on these initiatives and trying to at least delineate that they have nothing to do with it, because this diminishes the trust in the internet and also in the corporate sector. So we are now also seeing a Baidu and Chinese corporate sector that might be growingly, increasingly distance from using cyberspace for state interests and attacks and stuff, which is interesting from that part of the world. And secondly, when it comes to cybersecurity, we have seen that now the results of some investigations of the allegedly Russian cyber attack on the State Department and White House a couple of months ago show that actually even some of the unclassified emails of Obama went out. His private communications and protected communications within the White House were not endangered, but basically that shows that, again, the weakest link is the problem, and whenever the weakest link is broken, in this case unclassified communications within the State Department, you can always have the leak of the more or less classified information as well, which is maybe another concern for the diplomats in the room and the others to be even more cautious about using the email, no matter how protected the system might be if the other party is not as protected. When it comes to net neutrality, a brief comment on the level of EU. There's still discussions about the telecom package, which should incorporate net neutrality in one way or another, and it seems like there's still a lot of distance between different positions, so it's not likely we're going to see anything on net neutrality and the telecom package in Europe in the next month or two. And maybe the last comment when it comes to the next period, but I guess we are going to touch upon that later, is also the Freedom Online Conference, which is coming in about a week, which is again another multilaterally driven multi-stakeholder space for discussions on freedoms online. So it's taking place in Ulaanbaatar and 4th to 5th of May, and we're probably going to see another kind of a governmental push for more implementation of international law and rules that already exist to cyberspace when it comes to protection of human rights. And I'll stop there from my side. Thanks.
Thank you, Vlada. One interesting point here is, just for our zoom out view, is that cybercrime and cybersecurity communities are not necessarily the same. There is an overlap. And you can notice even with the scheduling of the event, cybersecurity community was heavily represented in the Hague conference. In the same time, you had the Doha conference where cybercrime community went. Now, it doesn't reflect the reality. Our research and the analysis show that cybercrime tools, which are used by cyber criminals, are very often used also for cybersecurity purposes. Therefore, it is in a way close interplay between cybercrime and cybersecurity. Therefore, cybersecurity community is closely watching in the fight against cybercrime what is used by cyber criminals. So it is an interesting interplay, and what you, Vlada, mentioned, that it came into the Doha resolution, the protection of critical infrastructure. It is also a step from cybercrime community towards bridging this gap. This is one of the major challenges. Communities are in their silos, and we're getting even micro silos. In the past, it was, let's say, IGF community with some overlap with the ITU community and ICANN community. You had more or less 3 communities acting. Nowadays, it's becoming really, really micro: human rights, cybersecurity, cybercrime, and different communities. And I think it's worth mentioning. Now, we got a comment from Carlos Caribe from, I guess, well, Carlos, you will tell us where you're joining from, on interesting initiative of interesting issue in the developing countries on the net neutrality. Facebook created a project, InternetGovernance, with more or less free access to the internet, improving the access for people who do not have access, but in the same time with certain risks that with this gift will come also closure of these new users within Facebook community. The initiative has the name InternetGovernance. Therefore, the activists in the developing countries, especially in Latin America, but also in India, reacted by insisting on net neutrality principle. Basically, their message is fine. Facebook can bring the internet. It's good for developing countries, but on the condition that there is net neutrality and all providers of the internet content can have access to these services. Therefore, that's Thank you for this alert. There was discussion on the hacking on the Hillary Clinton's email. Ginger just commented that Obama still uses his BlackBerry phone. It's PR for BlackBerry. I don't know how are they doing financially. They had some crisis. Most of them have two computers, one in the unclassified, classified network. That's fine. I don't know if Nigel is there. Would you like Nigel to comment on ICANN developments?
Yes. Yes. Good afternoon, Jovan, and good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Yes, good.
We can hear you well. Go ahead.
Well, I'm not that far away. I could sort of stand on the roof and shout, I suppose. Yes, thank you. Very briefly then, the IANA transition process, as you know, has been ongoing, and as you said, it's been over a year now. It was back in March 2014 when the NTIA made the announcement and asked ICANN to sort of facilitate a multi-stakeholder process to come up with a proposal of the transition for the critical internet resources element that ICANN does, the so-called IANA element, from the US stewardship to the global internet community. And a significant step was reached on this last Wednesday, the 22nd of April, when the naming group, this is the group that have been looking at the transition proposal for GTLDs and CCTLDs, came out with a consultation document, and I put the link in the chat. So this is a consultation document on what they consider to be a proposal, if you like, to replace the US role in this particular function. That proposal is out for public consultation until the 20th of May. They will then consider the responses, and it will go out on the 8th of June to the parts of the ICANN community that have to endorse it before it is then sent to the ICANN board and then to the US government. So there's now a definite timeline under consideration for that proposal. And it's I haven't got time to go over it, but it's an interesting proposal in that it proposes the sort of construction of a slightly separate body and a sort of like an affiliate of ICANN, but within the ICANN structure to take on the IANA function. So rather than have complete sort of normal staff, so to speak, of ICANN, you would create a new sort of affiliate entity, a bit like some companies do when they set up sort of separate trading elements within their corporate structure. In parallel with that, as many of you know, there's an accountability process that's been going forward. So this is some proposals to enhance the accountability of ICANN for when the US step back. And that is in parallel, if you like. That work has been going on in parallel with the naming work. And the public consultation on the accountability proposals will take place at the end of this week or on Monday, so either the 1st or the 4th of May. And that will go out for public consultation for 28 days or something like that. So there's quite a lot going on, so that the temperature is rising. So I expect in the barometer for next month for the IANA transition to be on the up rather than level. And hopefully, if all goes forward, then a proposal might be able to go to the NTIA either during the summer or soon after the summer. And as Jovan said earlier, that would possibly mean, although it's still not absolutely determined, that the contract with ICANN, between the NTIA and ICANN, would have to be extended for, say, a month or 2 months or whatever, while the US considered the proposal that's been put to them. So I'll stop there. There's lots of information online about this, both the accountability and the naming, and please join in if anyone is interested. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. We are in the building of World Meteorological Organization, where there is discussion on global warming and climate change. And if I can use this metaphor, we can expect very, very hot summer when in internet governance, and in particular, hot September, I guess. Okay, good. Thank you, Nigel. That's great to hear from you, the comments and summary on one of the key developments in ICANN-related developments. Now, we will quickly go through the floor is open for your comments and questions. Peter, please. Just for online community.
Thanks, Peter. This is Mission of Latvia. I think you did mention, but in April, a website went live, European regarding the European project GIPO or GIPO, Global Internet Policy Observatory, in which the Geneva Internet Platform is a partner, I think. Maybe you can elaborate a bit on this.
Yeah.
And just to add on the Special Rapporteur on right to privacy, the applications, I think, are open till the end of this week, and the Special Rapporteur will be nominated at the next session of the Human Rights Council at the end of the June, beginning of July. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. First on GIPO, yes, this is the new initiative of the European Union, and we are part of this broader consortium in attempt to make some sort of to organize information on the digital policy. And there are now 5 or 6 initiatives on the various observatories, and there is even a network of mappers who are mapping the mappers, and it's becoming busy field. And that's good. That will be different approaches and different views. I think that there are some sort of specialization. As far as I know, GIPO will focus mainly on the data mining, on collecting the data on digital policy from the available public resources. This is but we'll hear from them. I think on 30th of April they will have a webinar explaining what they plan to do. There is also initiative within Network Mundial initiative. We are working to launch the Global Digital Watch during the month of March, which will contain information on the 40 digital policy issues. Therefore, there will be quite a rich menu of the different sources of information for digital policy. And your second point was on the special rapporteur for the right to privacy. And here is one invitation. I don't know how familiar you are, the online community. I guess our colleagues here in the room are familiar. For the position of the special rapporteur, anyone can apply, and he or she does not need support of their respective national governments. Therefore, it is quite open process. You can just submit your application by the end of the week in this concrete case, and it will be considered by the UN Human Rights Council for the appointment. And what I've heard from colleagues is that it's quite inclusive and bottom-up process, in a sense that various proposals are considered on their merits, and that's important to highlight. Any other question or comment from the room? Please go ahead.
Madeleine Shep, Health and Environment Program. I'm the founder. I just want to know, in the collecting of data, if there's a process to make recruitment, how is it possible to know who will go to the public to collect this data?
You're referring to GIPO or in general, or?
General.
In general. Well, in general, I think the many proposals are relating to open data, because we have a lot of data already available, and the challenge is becoming how to make a sense in internet governance, but not only in internet governance. In climate change, people in this building are facing the same dilemma. In migration, is how to organize this data. And this, for example, inspired our IG briefings once a month. You have a lot of data. That data is not a problem. The problem is to organize it and to have some sort of sense. Therefore, that's the major challenge. How to mine that data and how to do it in inclusive and proper way, because as we are aware from, there are possibilities that once the data mining is done, particular tilts could be promoted in the way how data is processed and presented. Uzo, please. How's your leg?
Yeah, Fine, thank you. First of all, I want to thank you once again for this effort that you are done all the months, you and your team. That, for us, it's quite exceptional. And second, I hope that you'll provide us, even that this Malta conference will take place this month, maybe next meeting you will provide us information what happened in Malta, being there. And was another question regarding, but Vlada already answered about the Google case, what happened really in China and what is there. If could add something, it's very good. And I want also to ask more detail about the, let's say, U.S. executive order. What it's not clear how will be applied. Okay, I understand this. We discuss about the internet. This order also will act abroad the United States. It's a little interesting way to discuss, because also we discuss here about geography of the internet, and I think it's an interesting issue to debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Turo. As a matter of fact, we thought of putting it in under jurisdiction, because you pointed to the question is what will be the coverage? The coverage will be global. And the executive order is a part of sanctions regime. Therefore, in the case of the severe, significant, attack, the U.S. authorities, according to their sanctions law and sanctions regime, which is quite developed, can impose sanctions on individuals or entity who is behind this attack. And that's basically sanctions regimes, which can not necessarily. This is more the question of the national. It's not yet clear if it is the traditional sanctions regime applied to the internet-related issues, or the new type of sanctions regime which would use internet to apply. That's a good question. It's not yet clear. But my reading of the executive order is that it's more application of existing. Therefore, sort of halting the financial transactions, putting the entity or personality on the blacklist, various lists on the sanctions regime. And we are speaking about U.S., not UN sanctions regime. But it's a good question if it will imply also the internet-related sanctions. We'll have to wait and see. Yeah. We'll probably have to organize an interesting discussion with there are experts in Geneva like Professor Birstecker, who is at the Graduate Institute, to discuss how this new type of sanctions will apply. But it is important development. Okay, if you don't have any other question about the last developments, Petko, please now.
John, you have just said during your presentation in comments that the Budapest Convention is used widely into many national legislations and acts. On the same time, you did tell us that there is another trend to create a new organizational setup similar to Budapest Convention, with perhaps with the scope of getting the things worldwide. So now, your comment was that still Budapest Convention is still a very valuable principles applicable and usable for further processing of and using this in the real life. But as far as we know, number of countries adhering to the Budapest Convention formally is between 50 and 55. And the total nations is almost close to 200 in the world. So, which means that the formal adherence is around, let's say, 25-30%, and the rest is free to do whatever they want. There was a discussion about that in the past, let's say, 3-4 years, and countries which were not participating in the elaboration of the Budapest Convention were clearly saying that the outcome of the Budapest Convention does not reflect their own cultural environment in the global sense, in the strategic sense, and that it will be very difficult to foresee that they would adhere to that. So, on the other hand, we have the task to confront this seeming freedom of criminals to do whatever they want on the internet. And entities, whether they are national or international, they would like to get ways and means to execute their own mandate. I do not know. So whether this global new initiative would flourish and would englobe the things, I have no problem with using some of the principles enshrined already in the Budapest Convention, but my problem is to have this as widely as possible accepted and adhered to by the world community. And here I'm seeing a lot of difficulties and a lot of things to develop yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Petko. Well, this is I think one discussion which is not that visible in IG community, but extremely important. And the reality is, let's start from reality. Reality is that principles, mechanisms, approaches, terminology, which was introduced by Budapest Convention, is used worldwide for the national legislation, for the regional convention. This is reality. If you analyze the language which is used, concept behind it, it is more or less which was introduced by Budapest Convention. Budapest Convention in the field of the internet is one of the, let's say, solid and tested instruments. It was introduced, it was adopted in 2001. It's almost 14 years. In the field of the internet, it's almost ancient history. Now, therefore, I would say in reality, this argument, which is one of the arguments, it doesn't reflect the cultural differences. In reality, it's not the case because the principles and mechanisms are introduced worldwide in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America. Now, one point which is interesting is while internet is becoming more social, less technological device, if it reflects more social values than, let's say, 5 or 6 years ago, which was mainly technologically driven, one can expect increase of discussion on the social and cultural values. Therefore, it will be becoming more and more, I guess, in various, for example, level of interest in protection of privacy is different in Asia than in Europe. It's reality. And I think you can find quite different elements. Therefore, we can expect that, but so far, it is not the case. Budapest Convention principles are more or less used. The other argument, which is against it, it's on the principle level. Countries say, okay, we didn't sign it, we like it, we use the principles, but we didn't sign it, and we were not part of the drafting process. Therefore, we need something global. And third point, a critical point, is about participation in the Secretariat and in the process, which I think Council of Europe is now trying to find the ways to overcome that obstacle, that the countries which are not part of Council of Europe can amend, participate in possible protocols. And this is more or less the summary. But I think your point on culture is very interesting, because there is this dynamics with the shift of internet from the purely technical device to one which influences the social and fabric. There will be more and more on it. Good. That's Carlos Caribe saying that the Budapest Convention must be a piece of museum. Well, that's in Carlos, I like museums. Is it in positive, negative way? You have to substantiate your comment, otherwise it could be interpreted in different ways. Is it obsolete or it's as good as a museum to remind us about the core values of humanity. Okay, we will now shift to the developments, forthcoming developments. Now, I will be flying in about 1 hour and a half to Malta, where we'll host the conference on Internet as a global public good. It will be 2 days conference. You can find more information, and we will update, provide update during the next briefing what we discussed. Basically, the key issue of the conference is to see what parts of the Internet could be considered as a global public good. Is it technical infrastructure? Is it the data? Is it a root zone file? Is it whatever? Therefore, we'll try to discuss this issue, and then we'll on the 4th and 5th of May, there will be Freedom Online Conference in Ulaanbaatar. Vlada will be attending, therefore we'll have the first-hand information after that conference. We will be starting very busy digital month in Geneva with CSTD 18th session, which will have the VSIS follow-up as the major issues, and some sort of warming up for the negotiation that will start in June in New York about VSIS plus 10. That was the first signaling about the VSIS process. Will start. Will start on the 4th and 8th. On that, then we have 7th of May Asia Internet Symposium. We don't have any more information. 11th, 15th RIPE meeting. It's a regional internet organization for Europe in Amsterdam. 12th to 14th annual Internet of Things European Summit. Quite important also for data protection. From the 12th to 22nd of May ITU Council session, and the big day for ITU and for the global telecommunication community is 17th of May. ITU celebrates 150th birthday here in Geneva. I heard that there will be a great party, and we will join with some activities on providing historical context for our discussion on this. IGF MAG, Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Group, will have their consultations on 20th to 22nd of May. They will be preparing for the next IGF meeting in Brazil. And I just met Chengetai from the IGF Secretariat, and he told me that one of the metaphors they will use is menu. Menu, therefore food metaphor, not the climate change metaphor. And they ask national and regional IGF to propose different dishes for and recipes for the menu that should be served at the IGF in November, if I'm correct, in Brazil. Therefore, that's the menu metaphor. Then there will be African Internet Summit at the end of May, and VSIS Forum, World Summit on Information Society, which will be next step after the CSTD in preparing for the VSIS process. It won't be the formal part of the VSIS negotiation. It will be VSIS Forum, which will discuss action lines. But we have been hearing that countries are already preparing side events and sessions in a way for setting the stage for the negotiation, which will go in New York about the VSIS plus 10 summit, which will be held the beginning of December. Therefore, that's the major development. And there will be on the 28th of May, European Commission's second high-level cybersecurity conference. As you can see, many developments here in Geneva. Therefore, we'll follow them closely. But just to put on your radar, this is the one of the line which is important policy-wise, is the preparation for the VSIS plus 10 meeting at early December in New York, which will basically decide the future of the IGF, which will be decide different follow-ups to the VSIS. And the countries will start, and the NGOs and other players, other stakeholders will start sending their signals and preparing negotiation with CSTD meeting and later on VSIS Forum. This is the mapping for May and the major activities in May. It will be exciting time. We'll be very busy, and I invite you definitely to join us for our activities in May. We'll inform you, but also to follow what's going on and to join us for the briefing, which will be at the end of May. Thank you very much for your time, for our colleagues online. And Carlos will answer us if what he meant about a piece of a museum, and then we'll take it from there. Thank you for your time, and comments, inputs, and overall discussion. All the best. Bye-bye, online community.